Hello everybody, Jordon Lawrenz here, and as promised, after my Brewers post-game recap, I am back for a Packers post-game recap, and this was something. A game Packers fans will soon want to forget as they fall to the Denver Broncos, and it was a great week one. Obviously, we know what happened in week one with the Packers in the preseason there, but week two, yikes. 27-2 is the final. The Packers' lone score was a safety in the third quarter. Yes, that is it. 27-2. Packers fall to the Broncos. I'm Jordon Lawrenz here for the post-game recap. Let's get into it as the Packers fall to 1-1. The Denver Broncos are now 2-0 in preseason, and they've got three very solid, suitable quarterbacks that they can be running with here in this season. Obviously, this is preseason. Things are going to look a little different, especially when you've got starters playing against backups, and that's what we saw here, so that's really what got the best of the Packers team. I mean, if you want to go back to last week, right? You got Jordan Love coming into the game right out of the gate, gets that third down, 65-yard touchdown pass. Things are looking good. The Packers have momentum. Things are on the high. Clifford came into the game. He did exactly what he needed to do. He didn't have to do a whole lot more than that. It was a 23-10 win for the Packers last week. They got their touchdowns in the first and second quarter, but that's all they needed at the end of the day. In this game, absolutely nothing was going the Packers' way, and it all started on the very first play when Sean Clifford nearly fumbled. It was a bad snap. He was able to get it and work his way out of it, but it was not good. From play number one, you could tell just two very different things from last week to this week. It was not a good start. Things weren't looking good. And then, it's third down, fourth down. Both of them, they've only got 3 yards to go. So it's not too bad. The Packers are moving the ball up the field. Third down and 3, deep ball down all the way to the left, Aaron Rodgers style, which Clifford, I don't know if this is just a Packers thing or what, because we've seen Jordan Love do it last year as well. Third and 3 throws the long ball, but the Packers are going to be aggressive. They're like, all right, we're going to go for it. We're going to see how things go. Another deep ball. This one was maybe 10 yards shorter, but instead of going to the 10-yard line, it went to the 20-yard line from midfield. Why are we throwing the ball 30 yards down the field? We only need is 3 yards to get a first down. I don't know. I couldn't explain it. I didn't understand why it happened and why it did, but oh well, at the end of the day, it is what it is. That was a bad first drive, and we weren't sure what was going to happen from there. Bo Nix comes in, lights up this Packers defense, seemingly has a touchdown. It is overturned. I thought live that his foot was way over the automated fake blue line they put up. And yeah, his foot indeed was. They looked it over. They're able to get a field goal, are the Broncos. But Bo Nix finished this game 8 of 9 with 80 yards and a touchdown. So he played quite well, to say the least, and I think he locked up that Broncos starting quarterback spot. I don't think there was a whole lot of questions as to whether he was going to get it or not, especially when a few days ago when Sean Payton comes out and says, hey, Bo Nix is going to be our starter in week 2 of the preseason. So I think you're kind of figuring out then, putting the pieces together. He's had a good camp, everyone is saying, and like I said, the Broncos have 3 suitable quarterbacks on their roster, which I can't say about the Packers at this point in time. That was my first point here in this game, is the Packers' backup quarterbacks did not look good whatsoever. You just went out and paid Jordan Love all of this money, from the signing bonus to the 4-year deal worth more than any quarterback in NFL history. But you better hope he doesn't get hurt, because Sean Clifford, Michael Pratt are not going to cut it. They're not going to be the guys that can lead this team to a division title, to a playoff win, to a Super Bowl. Those 2 guys aren't going to do it. And I know the run game, we'll get to that a little bit later, but the run game certainly wasn't any better. I know when you've got Jacobs and Dillon in the mix, things are going to look a whole lot better than the likes of Emmanuel Wilson and Elias Mayweather, who both, they both tried, right? They did what they could, 21 combined carries for 59 total yards. We'll get into that again. Like I said, don't want to get ahead of myself here. But yeah, Sean Clifford finished this one 6 of 10 for 43 yards. 43 yards. Not good, to say the least. He had that interception as well, and that interception drive, that was coming up here. But yeah, not good from Sean Clifford. You go back, let's look at what he had against the Browns in that game. Obviously, we did see a little bit from QB3, Michael Pratt, in that game as well. But Clifford was 10 of 19 for 111 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. But overall, just had a much more clean game one against Cleveland and struggled big time here. He just wasn't able, there was no momentum, wasn't able to get anything going. I mean, nothing was going the Packers' way in this game. Offensively, defensively, they were coming up empty left and right. So special teams, they're punting. It was always just going into the end zone. They weren't pinning the Broncos far back. I don't know what else to say for that. Otherwise, just the Packers offensively struggled mightily to start this game, and it didn't get any better. Bo Nix, he only played one quarter, though, so the Packers were like, all right, we're going to get Stidham into the game. We'll see if we can kind of eat at him a little bit. And they did come the third quarter before he came out for Zach Wilson, but still, Jarrett was 7 of 11 for 65 yards. So not horrible, not fantastic, but better than 6 of 10 for 43 yards and then 10 of 16 for 52 yards. So the Broncos quarterbacks did their thing. They were able to rely on their offense to just get things moving and keep that ball moving up the field. But Packers drive, I did want to talk about. The fourth downs we'll get to here in a minute, but just right before the first half came to an end, the Packers had a 3rd and 4 from their own 5. They were pinned back deep off a very good punt from Denver. I mean, the Packers, they had more punt practice than they could have ever asked for in this game. Not enough kicking practice, but that's the last point here. But yeah, the Packers had 3rd and 4 back from the 5. Clifford stays in the pocket. He makes a really good throw, and the Packers are starting to move things a little bit. They finally strung something together. There's a 3rd down and 10 coming off a timeout. Denver, they're teasing blitz. They kind of sag back a little bit, and Clifford's able to read it well. He runs, is able to get a 10-yard gain. It was an 11-yard carry, actually. That was his only of the game. So he gets the 11 yards there on 3rd and 10. He's getting something going. Are the Packers going to score maybe, get a little back into this game before halftime? Nope. 17-0 going into the half because after a roughing the passer penalty, Sean Clifford throws his interception. And it was just not really competitive whatsoever, that pick. He just kind of threw it up there. It wasn't like a Hail Mary or a 50-50 ball or anything. It was just way too far in front of his receiver. Double coverage as well. Both not so good things to be throwing that ball into. He did force it for sure, but he was trying to make something happen before the first half came to an end, and he just couldn't do it. And that ultimately closed his book. Again, 6 of 10, 43 yards with the pick for Sean Clifford in his second preseason outing. And Clifford's supposed to be QB2, so just keep that in mind. It's not like he played horrendous. It's not like he was horrible and played with a pick 6 and 2 interceptions like Daniel Jones did, but yeah, he I don't know. He didn't do much in this game, and he had no run game as well. Play calling was a little bit all over the place, but you got to do what you got to do in a situation like the Packers were in. So Michael Pratt came in. Like I said, he really didn't have much going for him either. They tried some no huddle late in the game. I think that was the Packers' last drive where they went a little bit no huddle. Couldn't get anything on that either, and no touchdowns, no field goals, no offensive scores for the Packers at all in this game. Just the Zach Morton safety. Give credit to Morton. He's able to sack Zach Wilson and get that. So, yeah, they got that. They got the 2 points. 27-2 again was the final. But there was a lot of things that went wrong for the Packers in this game. Quarterbacks were certainly a part of it. They were one of the big things. But also, like I said earlier, 4th down. The Packers tried to go for it on 4th down, and they could not convert whatsoever. I mentioned the first one earlier where it was 4th down and 3, and they were throwing the ball 30 yards down the field. I really didn't understand what that was all about, but they just decided to throw it deep, and it didn't work. It just came up empty, and then you moved later on in the game. Packers had another 4th down attempt, weren't able to convert, and then they had the riskiest one. I'm not sure why they did it, but their 3rd 4th down attempt of the game came with 8 minutes left. You've got Pratt in. It's 4th down and 1. They decide to run the ball, and they get absolutely nowhere. Of course, because what else would happen at that point in time? And it did lead to a touchdown, but whatever. It is what it is at the end of the day. The game was already over at that point. But 4th and 1 from your own 34, I believe it was the 34, not the 31, looking down at my note, from the 34-yard line. I like the play calling. I like the aggressiveness. Go out there, see what your backups can do, see what they're able to come up with. But they just came up empty time and time again. 3 for 13 on third down as well were the Packers. So combined third and fourth down, 3 of 16. That's not going to win you any games. I can tell you that right now. No one needs to be an expert to figure that one out. So the third and fourth down efficiency are going to have to improve, and obviously they will. Again, these are backups. It's preseason. It's not the end of the world. Don't get too excited. Don't get too over the top extra, but Packers fans had a right to be upset and a little bit mad and disappointed after this game, but it is what it is. Life goes on. You're never going to finish a season undefeated in the preseason and regular season. We'd be lucky to go the regular season undefeated, but certainly that's not going to happen as well. Not in this National Football League. So, again, the Broncos are 2-0 now, so they got their win at home. They were able to play a good game in Denver. Pretty good crowd. They had a lot of Packers fans, too. Packers fans, we know, they travel very well, so it was nice to see a lot of green and yellow up in Denver, but they didn't have anything to cheer for. I mean, they were quiet. Some Packers road games feel like home games because of how into it these Packers fans and our cheeseheads are, but not this one, that's for sure. So at Mile High, it was all Broncos, 27-2. But fourth downs, we talked about that. We talked about the backup quarterbacks struggling in these games. So the next point I did want to make, where was the run game? I mean, in week one, we did see, obviously, our starters played in week one. They didn't play here. Week one, they didn't really do anything either, so keep that in the back of your mind. Josh Jacobs had 1 carry. He got 7 yards on that 1 carry. He didn't have any receptions for positive yards. He had 1 for -2, and that was it. A.J. Dillon, no receptions for A.J. Dillon. That's not really his game. The big thing a lot of people were worried about in game 1 was Dillon had 4 carries for only 2 yards. That's it. He had no O-line. No one was blocking for Dillon. I know a lot of people talked about how he looked better coming into this year and how he slimmed down a little bit, gained some muscle, things like that. But Quadzilla had nothing going for him in week 1. And then he didn't play at all here in this Broncos game, which I thought was a little bit interesting. But when you read the thing coming into the Packers game, where they tweet out they have 31 players inactive, you're like, second strings, third strings, fourth strings, fifth strings, we will take any walk-ons available at this time because if you're not playing 31 players, oh boy, there is a lot left on the table. So that's obviously what the Packers had coming into this one with 31 players inactive. It's all the starters that we knew weren't going to play. There was no reason to play any of them. You got your week 1 win. And again, you can go 0-3 in the preseason and no one's going to worry about it. No one's going to be like, oh boy, I'm worried about the Packers this year. And also on the flip side, no one's going to go, ooh, Broncos are 3-0 in the preseason. Let's watch out for them. You can't take the preseason too seriously. You really can't. It's starters playing against backups, like I said, or it's backups playing against backups, which in garbage time, nobody wins unless it's an entertaining game like we saw with the Vikings one last week. But then you got the J.J. McCarthy injury, so I don't know. That's a different tangent. That's a little bit off track, but that was just a little thing there. Obviously, Vikings in the Packers division. So, Emmanuel Wilson had 13 carries, as I mentioned, for 41 yards in this game. He did have a carry of 15 yards. When you take out the 15, he had 12 carries for 26 yards, an average of 3 yards per carry. That's not going to cut it. And I know, obviously, he's lower on the depth chart. Packers aren't going to have to worry about him running the ball like this 13 times in a game in the regular season. But is it an offensive line problem? Was the Broncos defense just that good? They kept some of their starters in for quite a long time, like playing into the middle of the third quarter. Some would say that's too long. Some would say they're just getting reps, getting back into it. I don't know. I didn't really care for that. But there was oh boy, the challenge. Can we talk about the challenge? Another sidetrack, another tangent here to get into. There was 10 minutes left in the game. Sean Payton's team is up 20-2. They are challenging a pass on third down. I think it was like 3rd and 8 or something. It was right in front of their bench. They thought it was a catch. They thought he was inbounds when he caught it. And I don't even remember who it was making the catch. I just knew Zach Wilson threw it to him. But incompletion, hello, why are we wasting the time? Why are we challenging? Why are we putting ourselves through this? You're up 18 points with 10 minutes left in your second preseason game of the year. I just don't know what you possibly have to gain from that. I really did not understand that challenge whatsoever. Maybe that was just me being a frustrated Packer fan wanting this game to be over with, but I have no idea what that challenge was for. I hope someone asked Sean Payton after the game why he challenged. Like, I didn't get it. I did not understand at all why that challenge flag was thrown. I did not. It made zero sense to me why you're challenging up 18 with 10 minutes left in a preseason game. I don't know. I've tried to, even right now, I'm trying to think of any logical explanation to keep your offense out there a little longer, but you've already had so many. I mean, time of possession, I didn't really look at what that came out to be at the end of the game. Pretty even. 30 minutes, 16 seconds for Denver, 29 minutes, 44 seconds for Green Bay. So a 16-second difference, and that's a crazy statistic when you think of it. For the Packers to be outscored by 25, have no offensive touchdowns, but they had 29 minutes of possession. That's interesting. I really didn't think of that or consider that into anything, but yeah, so that's that. The back to the run game, though, as we did want to mention for Green Bay, because they just, again, it was not pretty. They had nothing really going for them. And again, last week, too, it was Wilson had 13 carries for 67 yards. So he had a carry for 23 yards in that game against the Browns, but he was averaging 5.2 yards per carry. So he was getting a lot more out of it. Things were looking a lot better going for Wilson. But again, week 1, week 2, those were the differences. Like, there was just so much happening in week 1 for Green Bay to be able to look at coming into week 2. And then, is it because we played the Broncos starters for a while? Is it? I don't know. I don't really have an answer as to why the run game wasn't working. I think the backup and some of these offensive line reserves are worrisome. Maybe not as worrisome as our QB 2 and 3 at the moment, but no run game, no pass game, no nothing for Green Bay in this game. Like, there was just, you can't take away anything offensively from this game. Like, there was really nothing at all to come out on the positive side of things and be like, oh, that was a really good play, or that was a really good throw. The no huddle, could you maybe throw that into things when Green Bay mixed it up and went no huddle late in the game? They were able to get a few yards at least. I mean, it wasn't, we've seen so many 3-and-outs that happened in this game, but I don't know. There was, run game didn't work, pass game didn't work. Life goes on, right? That's just how it is at the end of the day. The Packers lost this one, but they're going to be fine, and there's going to be nothing to worry about coming into the regular season. It's just, you watch the preseason games, and you get a lot of thoughts and a lot of things formulating in your mind. So I just kind of wanted to mention that there, because both of them had low spots. Both of them had nothing, like literally nothing, and that's all it was at the end of the day, because another thing that had nothing was our kickers, right? And this was a competition. We knew this coming into it. You had Anders Carlson and Greg Joseph. That was the whole thing this training camp, is they were kind of kicking it out. And there's a third kicker as well, but we haven't seen him come into play yet so far this preseason or anything like that. But the whole thing this offseason was the kicking battle. Anders Carlson last season, he wasn't perfect. We all know that. He was a far from perfect kicker. He did make some good kicks. He had some rough kicks as well, including some extra points missed. But let's talk about last week. Anders Carlson, and this was the thing last week. When you score 23 points, you're getting a mix of touchdown and field goal. So you have the opportunity to be able to bring in both kickers, and they rotated. They would bring in one, bring in the other, bring in one, bring in the other, basically that formula. They didn't have the chance to do that when they only had one field goal attempt here in the 27-2 loss. So, for Green Bay last week, Anders was 2 of 2 with his field goals. His long was 46. He had an extra point as well. Greg Joseph, he made his field goal, which was from 35, and he made his extra point as well. This week, there was only one kick attempted from Green Bay. Greg Joseph was the one to go out and try and make the kick. It was from 46 yards, and he was wide. I mean, he missed this bad. It was not close. It was not competitive. It was kind of close, I guess, if you really want to think of it. But it wasn't when it comes down to it at the end of the day. It wasn't anything that you can hang your hat on as a Packer fan and be like, all right, that happened. You know, like, there was just... It was from the field goal. I was trying to find exactly how far it was, but I think it was 46 yards. But yeah, I don't know. It was a 47-yard field goal, no good. So close enough there. But yeah, it was off to the right. I don't they they said they were playing in the elements. There was a little bit of rain. They mentioned humidity as well. Obviously, that's going to happen when it's done raining and it gets a little bit hotter out and it gets stickier hot at night. It's not comfortable, not fun to play in. But I'm sure he just didn't have his groove. He wasn't ready. I mean, none of the kickers really knew if they were ever going to see a time in this game. Would love to know the thought process of as to who got the kick in this. Are we flipping a coin off on the sideline? Like, what are we doing? I'm not sure. But Joseph missed the 47-yarder. And again, a goose egg for Green Bay offensively. Only the 2 points came from the safety. But I just think that when it boils down to it, is Greg Joseph the guy? Is Anders Carlson the guy? We still don't know, and that's a problem. I know we're only 2 weeks into the preseason, but you don't want to spend the first 5-6 weeks of the regular season trying to figure out, all right, maybe we use this guy for extra points and this guy for field goals. You don't want to do that. You don't have to worry about, oh, it's on the left hash, there's wind blowing to this direction, Greg Joseph is better off. You just need one kicker. We had Mason Crosby for all these years. He had a bad year or two, but then he would be way better. I mean, he was up and down all throughout his career. I wish there would be a guy, or Anders Carlson would be able to learn from a guy like that, because Greg Joseph so far is proving he's not the guy. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but who's our kicker? Like, that's the question. Who is our kicker late in the year when we're in the NFC Championship game, facing the 49ers, chance to go to the Super Bowl? It's a 2020 game. You got to kick to win it. You know, maybe you're down by 2. Maybe it's 21-19 for some reason, and you got Anders Carlson coming out for a 57-yarder with 2 seconds left to win the game. These are the situations, obviously way out in the future, but these are the things you have to think about now, because there's only one kicker that can do it for you, and I don't want to be rotating back and forth with these kickers and having to worry about who's going to be accurate or who's going to be coming up short on a night like tonight. So it's a consideration, it's a competition, it's a lot of things at this point in time. And I know they tried to mention tonight, the broadcasters, that tried to be like, oh, the joint practices, you get 5 live reps for your kickers and this and that. Joint practices are nothing. Preseason games are nothing compared to when you're playing in Lambeau Field and it's negative 15 degrees on a January divisional game against the Lions. You know what I mean? There is a big difference from a week 2 preseason game, missing a 47-yarder, to coming down in those divisional battles where it's cold, that football's going to feel like a rock. You're playing in the elements, or you're playing in front of 80,000 people with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. That's my complete overreaction to all of this kicking stuff is I just want to find a kicker who we can rely on and we don't have to worry about this. That's all that was. That was quite the tangent when you think of it. But at the end of the day, Packers fans just want a kicker. They just want one, and that's it. You know, if we haven't found our guy yet, we're going to look for him. I'm not saying we have to give up on either of these options at this point in time, but it's something to consider, and it's something we have to watch out for moving forward. I did save the best for last, though, Packers fans. We put up our 2 points in this game thanks to Zach Morton. So the safety came for Green Bay, and it was, I don't want to say it was beautiful, I don't want to say it was glorious, but it felt good to be able to get the safety. So just to recap that drive real quick, it was a 2-play, negative 11-yard drive for the Broncos. They were up 20-0. First down and 10, it turns into a 1st and 15 on an offensive holding penalty. They're backed up to the 7-yard line. Zach Wilson goes back, and the sack comes. Zach Morton is able to make the sack, get the safety, get the Packers on the board. The Akron native, 6'5", 261 pounds, 25 years old, is Zach Morton. Again, he played at Akron, so had a little bit of experience at Syracuse before going to Akron. At Syracuse, he played in just 5 games, didn't have any stats, so nothing to note for him at Syracuse before the transfer. He had his 2 years at Akron. He played in 24 games in those 2 years, so he was playing. He was getting out there and playing in all of those games. He had 24 tackles solo, 37 assisted tackles for a total of 61 tackles. He had 2 interceptions. One of them was a pick 6. So how about that? in his junior year at Akron, making a statement right out of the gate. I just thought that was fun. Wanted to mention that as he got the touchdown, and that's awesome. A 24-yard pick six. So good for Zach Morton. Thank you so much, Zach Morton, for getting us on the board in this game, because I do not know where Packers fans had to be at without you. And again, it's 2 points. It's a consolation prize. We needed a touchdown. We needed anything else to really be like, all right, feel a whole lot better about it. But we didn't get that. I did question if we were going to go for it. I didn't mention this when I talked about fourth downs. There's a 4th and 1 from our own 30 with 4 minutes left. So 4 minutes later than the one we just attempted, where it failed miserably. But we didn't go for that one. We punted, and that was the game at that point. Obviously, we knew it was long gone. It was well over. But give credit to the punters, because Daniel Whelan, he only had 4 punts. Felt like he had more than that. But 4 punts for 219 yards. 2 of them ended in a touchback. 2 of them ended inside the 20. So if you fix those 2 that ended in touchbacks, maybe you get an extra one that is inside the 20 or wherever the third or the fourth one would be. But yeah, he had a long of 59 in this game. So Daniel Whelan certainly had his punts all set out for him. But that's it, guys. 27-2. The Denver Broncos, again, improved to 2-0 now in the preseason as they beat the Colts last week 34-30. The Packers' 23-10 win over the Browns has now fallen to a 1-1 record with this 27-2 loss here against the Broncos. But Lambeau Field will see a game next week. It'll be the Ravens coming up on the 24th, so back to a Saturday game for Green Bay at Lambeau Field. It is projected to be 71 degrees in Green Bay for that 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. Packers, Ravens, just to look at the Ravens real quick in their 2 preseason games. They lost to the Eagles 16-13, but picked up a 13-12 win over the Falcons, so they are sitting at 1-1. Baltimore's quarterback in that game was Josh Johnson. He went 11 of 11 with 120 yards and a touchdown. Maury Jones as well, 7 of 9, 100 yards and a touchdown. And then Devin Leary, 3 of 5, 24 yards. Obviously, Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the big guys aren't going to be coming out, especially in the third game like that. And we're not going to see any backwards passes from Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to see any scrambles from Brock Purdy or any Caleb Williams or anything like that. We're going to see Sean Clifford back in it again, and it looks like it's going to be Clifford against Johnson next week at Lambeau Field. So that is that. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this Packers post-game recap. Sorry, Packers fans, we wanted a better outcome, but again, it's the preseason. Push that relax button. Everything's going to be okay. We got nothing to worry about. Hopefully next week's a little more competitive, a little more fun. Anything like that, that's all we can ask for. And then the preseason in Brazil against the Eagles is coming up very, very soon. Again, thank you all for tuning in. I am Jordon Lawrenz, ending this one here as the Packers fall to the Broncos